First off, thank you for letting me participate. It's honestly incredibly humbling to be among such brilliant women focused on solving some of the hardest technology and world challenges. And so really just thank you for letting me be part of this. I don't know how much you know about Ball Aerospace. I've been there for 16 years and really just kind of aligns with the SWE theme of the year of curiosity. We consider Ball to be full of endlessly curious people, mission focused, creating innovative space solutions, more accurate weather, insightful observations into our planet, delivering data and intelligence, and really making sure those who go out to defend our freedom come home safely. And so those are some of the things that Ball is really dedicated to. We're part of a $11.5 billion company that supplies really innovative and sustainable aluminum packaging for almost any can you pick up. It really helps Ball Aerospace to be part of that company. They invest in us and they support us endlessly, and that's been fantastic for our growth and for our opportunities for our engineers to work on. We are so excited at Ball that one of our own, Heather Doty, is becoming the 2021 SWE president. Again, as in line with Practice Curiosity, she has always been so innovative and creative and taken unusual courses through studying music and lots of other things to get where she is today. She always keeps her aperture open and sees those possibilities in such cool and creative ways. So it's really wonderful to see her taking the helm here at SWE. She has a degree in civil engineering, music. She joined Ball as a structural engineer and worked on some of our really foundational programs such as James Webb, look at doing focal plane arrays and weather and earth imaging payloads. She pursued an MBA while working full-time to complement her technical skills with additional business acumen. She served as the engineering integration manager when Ball was going through tremendous growth. And for those of you who have been at organizations that are undergoing that kind of growth, all the fabric starts to fray in all these places that are some you could foresee and some are very surprising. And Heather was really there to coordinate the organization's response, particularly with onboarding new people and bringing new engineers in and integrating them into our culture. And now she does a lot of the project engineering work for our manufacturing and test operations. So she's just been really instrumental in helping Ball retain its culture while going through such tremendous growth. She said the best part of SWE is the people, and we say at Ball the best part of Ball is the people. So that speaks so highly of your organization and your commitments to your members and to the broader community. She is a role model and a mentor. She's enthusiastic about supporting next generation women engineers, and so I think she's a wonderful pick. And congratulations, Heather. You've done so much for Ball. I'm sure you're going to do amazing things at SWE. I know you've been a member for a long time, so congrats. And you got a really good one from Ball Aerospace. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Paula. I'm really fortunate to have grown up in a household that valued education and learning. My natural curiosity was encouraged. I built crazy contraptions out of Legos and Tinker Toys and Lincoln Logs, sometimes all at the same time. I read voraciously. I particularly enjoyed mysteries, science fiction, and fantasy, the worlds of wonder and why and what if. And if I had a question about something, my mom would point to the bookshelf and tell me to look it up. And let me tell you, finding answers in Encyclopedia Britannica required a different level of persistence than using a Google search. I did very well in school because I just wanted to know everything. And in this growth phase of trying to absorb all the information in the world, I also began learning to play the flute. At first, it was a thrill just to get a real tone to come out of the instrument. Then it was coordinating my fingers to go with the right dot on the page. Then my band teacher challenged me to see how fast I could play a particular line without making a mistake. He taught me different techniques to specifically increase my speed. He also encouraged me to keep a practice log. I became obsessed with logging more hours than anyone else in band. and I got better a lot faster as a result. But at some point along the way, a single moment in time, I think it happened really gradually, I somehow went from getting good grades because I wanted to know the answers to wanting to know the answers in order to get good grades. Instead of practicing for its own sake, I was practicing to stay on top, to keep first chair. The end result may have looked the same on the outside, but the feeling inside was completely different. Instead of being excited about new discoveries or mastery, I was worried about not knowing the right answer. I was terrified to fail, and I tended to stick with things that were safe so that I wouldn't. Maybe that's why, when choosing a major, I decided to do a double degree in music and engineering. It was kind of a hedge, right? I could pursue two different things that I really liked, and if one didn't work out, I had a backup. Until I experienced failure at both of them and had the opportunity to rediscover my growth mindset. In engineering, the failure was a physics test my freshman year. I was supposed to be at a Billy Joel concert, so maybe I was bummed to be missing some music. But I failed this test, and it wasn't one of those test failures where you know you're bombing it while you're taking it. No, I totally thought I aced it. It turned out not to be a huge setback because in this case, I went to my TA's office hours. I asked what the right solutions to the problems were, and it was pretty obvious pretty quickly where my misunderstanding was. I resolved to check in for understanding more frequently, ask more questions, and I aced the next test. In music, though, the failure was a little different. It was the fact that I was the only music major who auditioned for symphonic band and didn't get in. I had to participate in campus band, which is mostly non-majors. So the next semester, I picked a showier audition piece and practiced twice as much, and I didn't get in again. So I doubled down, picked an even more challenging piece, and I didn't get in. 3 semesters in a row. I was trying to figure out what happened, what had I failed at in my preparation, what else could I have done. I'd always in the past been able to analyze a situation and come up with something, but I had nothing to go on. I didn't know what else I could do. So the only thing I could think of was to ask the band director directly. The very thought of doing this made my throat tighten and my palms sweat. So observation number 1, the guy made me nervous. Maybe that was part of my problem. But I made an appointment, swallowed all my pride, and asked him point blank why I hadn't gotten in. What do I need to do to get into this band? And his answer upended all of my assumptions about what I needed to do. He told me that my playing was technically excellent, but that I was missing the artistry, the emotion. He wanted to feel inspired by my playing. It was like my very own Mr. Holland's Opus moment. If you haven't seen that movie, I highly recommend it. It was totally unexpected, and it was really hard to take. But with this new information, I changed my approach. I chose a piece for my next audition that wasn't really all that difficult, but that I found truly beautiful. And I focused all my attention during the audition on feeling the piece, not worrying about what my fingers were doing, and I just lost myself in it. And I not only got into the ensemble, I was named one of the soloists. So where am I going with all of this? As engineers, we understand curiosity about the world and how things work is what drives innovation. If we didn't nurture our innate curiosity, we'd probably have ended up in another profession. But there are factors, external and internal, that can interfere with our curiosity. One set of curiosity killers are those tied to self-worth, as illustrated by my 2 college stories. In recovering from the physics test, I sought external information that I knew existed and had a right answer. It was easy for me to be curious in that case. In the second situation, this was the subjective viewpoint of another individual in the eyes of the band director, and it challenged a perception I had about myself. So that was a lot harder to become curious. Sometimes these 2 things become intertwined. A study by the University of Cambridge a couple of years ago found that women are 2.5 times less likely to ask questions in academic seminars than men. It's not that they don't have questions. Rather, the women rated internal factors as being more important than the men did. Factors such as not feeling clever enough, couldn't work up the nerve, worried that I had misunderstood the content and the speaker was too intimidating. These are uncomfortable situations, but what my music background has taught me is if something doesn't feel natural or it isn't easy, the way to change that is to practice. My first day at Ball Aerospace, my boss showed me to my desk and introduced me to my office mate, another female engineer who had been with the company about 6 months, and we were approximately the same age. And he said, when, not if, when you have questions, ask each other first. If neither of you know the answer, learn together. So I went to my first technical meeting, excited to see what this world of space was all about. Remember, my degree was in civil engineering. My very first aerospace meeting. And I understood about 3 words in the entire meeting when the team leader said, "Good morning, everyone." I was so lost, I couldn't even formulate a question to bring back to my office mate. I was wondering what the heck I had done. What was I going to do? So the next meeting, I decided, well, at least I can start with the vocabulary. I took notes of all the terms I didn't understand. I think it was about 2 pages. And I took it back to her and we looked at it, and she was able to identify a couple for me, and she didn't know what the rest were either. So we walked down the hall to ask one of the principal engineers in our department. He answered several more and then told us the rest that we'd have to ask people in different departments. It wasn't something that was actually expected of us as structural engineers to know that terminology. But he was like, if you do go and find out, please come back and let me know, because that's something I've often wondered about and I haven't had time to dig into it. So in my first 2 weeks at Ball, basically, I learned 2 things about the culture that really have driven what's kept me there. 1, it's okay not to know the answers. And 2, the people here are endlessly curious and do want to know more. They want to solve the problems. It's not about the ego. It's about the engineering. Some years later, maybe 8 years or so into my career, I was working through a set of drawing changes with a very experienced design engineer, probably 20, 25 years with the company. And after I explained the rationale for the changes we needed to make, he grumbled a little bit because it was additional work that he had to do to fix this. But then he looked at me and he said, "You know what, you're my favorite structural engineer." And I was like, "Oh, that's so nice." And then he continued, "You're not the smartest one." Well, gee, thanks. That's great. But he continued on, he says, "But you know what you know, and you know what you don't know, and you find out what you need to know, and you're not a pain in my behind." And while that might not be the tagline that I want to use for my personal brand, I can totally live with that perception. So practicing curiosity has certainly helped my professional development, but it's always been incredibly valuable, and probably more so in my relationships. The number of misunderstandings and conflicts I could have avoided by practicing curiosity could probably fill a whole Netflix miniseries. So, at work, at home, in SWE, there are so many of them, and many of them perhaps don't paint me or the other person in the best light. But they typically have several things in common. So I'm not going to share details, but here's what they have in common. Number 1, something happens. Number 2, I make up a story about the other person's intent. This story inevitably revolves around some insecurity or shortcoming I have around myself. Number 3, I act out based on that assumption that the story I told myself. Number 4, the other person gets upset because I acted out. And hopefully we get to number 5, where we actually finally talk it out, and it turns out that story that I had in my head was a complete work of fiction. And oftentimes the other person has a complementary volume of fiction in their own mind. I've managed to build an awareness, so now I'm better. Not perfect, but better. I'm still practicing at catching myself in storytelling mode. I stop and ask the other person a question. Because honestly, what do I have to lose? My worst fear is that they'll confirm the story I already made up. So I already think that's what they think. So if they tell me otherwise, I'm in a better place. And another thing that limits curiosity in a team environment is a lack of diversity and inclusion. If your team thinks just like you, you'll think you have all the answers because there's no one there to ask the questions that you haven't thought of. And if you have diversity, but not inclusion, the person with the different but brilliant idea may not feel comfortable to share. It's also much more difficult to be curious when there's a chance that the information you seek will challenge your assumptions, beliefs, or identity, which is a bigger risk when interacting with people who are different from you. But it's also the best way to learn and grow. Truly being curious, asking questions, and being open to the answers can make us feel very vulnerable. But new information may challenge our worldview. But with practice, anything difficult gets easier. And this is truly the way to open space for diversity of thought and experience, no matter what life stage you're in. So take some time today to ponder how you will next practice curiosity.
Thank you, Heather, and congratulations. And congratulations to all our newly installed leaders. Your leadership, Heather, during FY21 will remind us to practice curiosity. And thank you to Ball Aerospace and your employees, to our SWE members, guests, and anyone who is watching the ceremony from the safety of their home. We know FY21 will be a successful year with your support. Please stay safe and healthy. Thank you.